Hey everybody, checking in with the Richard Listens show. Welcome back, and I'm here in studio with my co-host, Mr. Darrell Noel.
What's going on, folks? How we doing?
He's going to give us secrets to performance coaching, as well as to something, maybe a little secret about cooking and his passions. He drops little nuggets on how to make a steak once in a while.
I got plenty of gems.
Today, we are privileged to have in studio a performance coach who works with combat fighters, boxers, and even the occasional lazy podcaster like myself. He's been featured. I got to see a clip of him on HBO, narrated by Max Kellerman, so you know he's the real deal. I'll tout him up, and hopefully he'll share a little bit about his experience. He's worked with world champion boxers, UFC fighters, and other celebrities here in the agency, including having worked with Mickey Rourke, Rob Benedict, Sam Reed, Barrett Foa, and TV ABC 7, Los Angeles. Without further ado, he's going to share details about his work and some of the more interesting and rewarding aspects to working in the competitive realm of MMA and boxing. Without further ado, we welcome Mr. Taylor Ramsdell.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I see you definitely checked out my website and got a lot of info. I need to update that.
Well, Darrell was, he sent me to your Instagram. He sent you to the website. You're like, uh-oh.
No, that's great.
No, I mean, it seems like you've covered a lot of realms. How long have you been training folks here?
Well, in Los Angeles, I moved to Los Angeles in 2009. I first became certified as a trainer actually in 2003 in Arizona. And then
so it began as strength and
yeah, well, it
training.
began. I got my certification in 2003 when I was going to school. I actually got my marketing degree. I graduated from Arizona State with the degree in marketing, magna cum laude, and went to Kansas City from there and started framing houses. So I've jumped around a lot, and what I've always done on the side is, I guess this kind of goes into how training became a job, but I always was a trainer on the side. I did it for many, many years as just in between jobs while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a living. And while I was doing that, I was always making a little bit of noise, doing things a little bit differently. Just, I always enjoyed it. I was always passionate about it and had fun.
Were you passionate about training yourself?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it goes back to youth, right there. It's always been very rewarding for me. It's always helped me feel better, made me feel good, helps with confidence. And even when I was younger, with sports, I was a smaller guy, and all the way up until before my sophomore year in high school, I played very competitive soccer. And the coach had said that I was going to be, he thought that I was too small to play varsity that year. And a lot of people that I played with were going to be going to varsity, and it kind of put a chip on my shoulder. So I quit playing soccer and started playing football. And then through the training, and it goes into, and you'll like hearing this, is the mindset is big on me. I know you're a psychologist, so that's a big part of it, but the weight room really helped that. But then by the time my senior year came around, I was captain of the team, was recruited, asked to walk on to Division I school, did that, and then ended up stopping sports and chased sex, drugs, and rock and roll for quite a while, and that's how I ended up in Arizona.
Mastered that one. I mastered that ship.
Yeah, that's when I wound up in Arizona. And like I said, I'll drop that again, that I graduated, magna cum laude, but I am very honest, and I'll say that I didn't really learn much except for how to live, or how not to live, however you want to say it. Yeah. Then I moved to Kansas City, and I still had that certification as a trainer, and I was working construction because I got hired as a financial advisor. As a very cutthroat place, and it was more so, I think, just for my ego to get the job. And once I got the job, I realized that this was going to be an 80-hour work week behind a desk, and that just wasn't there yet for me. So I was working construction, which was actually my second favorite job outside of training, because of that real instant gratification. You show up, there's nothing there, and then when you leave, there's something that you have immediately built. And that's also with training. I mean, it's obviously not, as Drill knows, it's not instant gratification, but there are those moments when you can push somebody to the next level and you can see it happening.
I mean, either way, when you show up, you come in and there's no sweat. Like there's some evidence every day that you put in work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I continued to do that. I always was training on the side, and go back to what I was saying. I was always making a little bit of noise, and people were always saying, man, you should really do this. You should pursue this. Maybe you should open your own gym. You should. And I was like, nah, I don't want to take what I'm just doing for fun and just kind of on the side and make it work, because in my head, I didn't like the jobs. I mean, I worked so many different jobs, and I didn't want to turn it into a job. And then finally, I just kind of looked at it differently and started thinking in a different way and thought, well, why not?
It's an interesting point, because Darrell was mentioning earlier about his cooking. It's the same thing. Like, in a way, there's like this fear of turning our passion into a career. Mm-hmm. Like, it's going to take away the joy. Mm-hmm. And we do know there's psychological theories like the overjustification hypothesis. If you take something that you just enjoy doing every day and then someone throws a bunch of money at you, eventually you're like, I have to do it for the money.
Right.
Or you lose focus and passion of doing it altogether.
You know, right. Because the things that made it fun and just showing up to play on the playground, now all of a sudden it's a grind. It's you have to, and you have to. I have no idea, like having to put up 25 points a game, like, and for fighters, right, where it's the W or the, or I mean, so much must go into once, if you lose, it's a complete character rebuild almost.
Yeah. And that's when I came to LA is whenever that started happening. So I moved to LA in 2009 and started training people out of my house and, or out of the area where I lived in, and going to people's places. Then I got a little small studio over by the Grove and Farmers Market. I was renting it. It was a husband and wife, also a trainer team, and they had it half the day. I had it half the day. Outgrew that real fast. Came upon a place that I turned into a gym that I really couldn't afford. And basically we're in October now. So the way I did it was I worked in October to pay for November. I worked in November to pay for December. And I didn't do it all on my own. I mean, I had help, but it wasn't like, here's a whole bunch of money, go do it. It was like, here's a little bit to help you out now. And then, and I did that from the bank. I did that from people I knew, and continued growing. And then I actually met my wife at that gym. She was the first trainer that I actually brought on. And then, we ended up hitting it off later, and
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And it worked out, there's so many different things I could say or warnings, but that's what we knew. And it did end up, working out. We ended up getting married. We have a 5-year-old now.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, and
but just to point that out, because this question's been coming up with several people I'm meeting who are passionate and working in the sports realm. And they're saying to me, well, these 80-hour weeks, these 60-hour weeks, I'm committed. I work for a major sports team, but how do I develop a relationship? Mm-hmm. I think, just what you highlighted right there is when you're pursuing your passion, even though it may be a grind, that it opens you up to meeting people who are like-minded.
Yeah. And it was one of those things too, to where it was amazing when we were there together and kind of growing up together and doing all that. And then what happens, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. We ended up expanding. And then the next step was we were going to expand again, or we were going to sell the gym. And we ended up selling the gym. And we went our separate paths as far as work. Like, she still trains there. I train there a little bit, but mostly I'm based out of another facility. And as we look back on it, it was great. But now it's also great that we aren't right next to each other all day long. Because at the end of the day, we can literally say, hey, how was your day? And before it was like, if I already know how your day was, I was saw it all day. So that was helped. I mean, we make a good team. She kept it all together, and I made a lot of sound, a lot of noise, and, so far so good. Yeah, absolutely. She keeps the lights on, and I don't know. I jump around.
Are you out splashing and doing the media stuff now?
Yeah. Well, what happened was whenever we sold it, it was a blessing, and it was a good footing and got us to a certain level, but we did it all mom and pop shop. We were doing everything as opposed to doing what we were best at or what we really wanted to do. We did it all, and we were doing well. But what I tell people is that we weren't doing as well compared to the amount of work we were putting in. We were profiting, but it was like, okay, and the way we looked at it was we could, like I said, we could expand, but it was just going to be more of that work for a little bit more, et cetera. It wasn't the way I did it. It just kept growing. I didn't start out, like I said, I worked in October to pay for November, for example. I didn't look at the grand scheme of thing, like look at the end. I didn't do it properly. I was young. I was just young and excited, and I had some success because I was just pushing it. I was passionate about what I did, but there was no real proper business plan at the time. I'm always open to doing all that again, but when I do it all again, I'm going to do it with a team in place, with a plan, and we see the end goal, and we work backwards. And I've got you doing the podcast. I've got Drell doing the podcast. I got the producer over there looking at the laptop like he is now. He's doing what he's special at. I'm doing what I'm good at. And we're a team. You know what I mean? And that's
right.
That's if I do it again, that's what I.
Let's draw it up. Let's do it. No, I mean it's the value of just got finished reading Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic that everyone should read, and people have told me about for a long time. But part of what he talks about is the power of mastermind groups, power of getting together and having. You can't see the whole aspect, and yet we try and always figure it out on our own. I don't know if it's cultural conditioning or the American dream of go and pursue your passion, but how? And
right.
and then we don't realize the law of diminishing returns when you're doing everything, and then you find yourself as a business owner. Well, I got in this because I'm passionate about training people, and now, I've got to run payroll and spreadsheets.
Yeah, there's a book, The E-Myth, that's good, that talks about that. I think it's the woman's, she makes cupcakes. It continues, and then she doesn't like making cupcakes anymore. She's doing the booking and all this stuff. But it's really funny because I always recommend that book to everybody. I read the first 50 pages.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, because I didn't have time, because I don't have the people doing my stuff. So eventually I'm going to read that whole book, and by then, then I'll have it all set. Then I'll have it figured out. But if you read it, you can give me the Cliff's Notes version.
Insights, right?
Well, thank you. So you've empowered me, but or we can develop accountability plan. Where you check in with me every week and you say I read 5 pages.
I like it.
I mean, I regularly, because I'm busy seeing clients, but to me, that's my self-care, is a little bit of reading. And so I have 3 books going on different subjects. And even if I get through, I'll write down a goal for the week to get through a chapter. And so I feel like I learned a little bit more about coaching, one chapter for the week. But it is hard to carve out that time. But if we can do it for our physical health and strength training, probably we can do it for areas that we're not as proficient, or it's not as comfortable for us to grow metaphorical muscles in. So the E-Myth, or one I've read recommend, is called the Pumpkin Plan.
Oh, okay.
It's all about what would you want to do if you decided you want to raise a championship pumpkin. Would you go to Target and buy the seeds, or would you seek out
the pumpkin
and figure out where the best seeds were?
I called Charlie Brown.
You'd call Charlie Brown
the Great Pumpkin or whatever.
The Great Pumpkin Patch.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, we went off.
It's
about
okay.
The expansion, but we were talking about the fighters.
So what led you to? That's interesting about Mickey Rourke, though, because I met Manny Pacquiao's sparring partner, Liam.
Okay, yeah.
And he mentioned that he's a roommate of Mickey Rourke right now.
Yeah, Liam's a great guy. Yeah.
So maybe we'll get him in here in the future.
And Mickey actually came to me through another one of my fighters, through a UFC fighter, Alan Joban.
Was he training for a fight or for a movie?
That's how he came about. Well, Mickey used to box. He still boxes. Okay, and he wanted fight training, and so he saw that I was working with Alan. He had met Alan. They did. Alan did some work with him. I don't know if it was a stand-in or I can't remember, but he saw that he was working with me, and he came and started training with me, and he was doing the fight training. So it works both ways. I train the fighters, and then other people come in because they see that I train the fighters. They want to train like a fighter. They want to get in fight shape, and then vice versa. So it all feeds off each other as far as the business goes. And there are many different ways to train. So somebody might come to me because I train these fighters, but they don't necessarily want to train like a fighter. They might need to get ready for a role. They might have to get, a full transformation. Like another person I work with is Devin Sawa, and we did an amazing transformation together. He put in the work, he put in the effort. I just, told him which way to go and try this and try that, and he did it. And that wasn't like fight training. That was a lot of bodybuilding style stuff. But yeah, with Mick found me through the fighters, and the fighters found me back 2009, 2010. I can't remember if it was the year I actually moved to LA or if it was a few months. I think it was. But I just started training some MMA fighters. A good friend of mine, Jimmy Romero, sent me a few guys and I worked with them, and they did very well. And then word of mouth spread. And then another friend who was a good buddy of a boxer, his name is Zach Woolman. He's a local guy. He was a pro boxer, and he was a pro boxer under Freddie Roach and Eric Brown. We were out getting coffee one time, and we talked about training. He came to train me. His manager also manages a whole bunch of other boxers. His name's Steve Bash, works with Russians, all this stuff. So it just it became a snowball, and these guys kept doing good, kept doing well, and it just grew from there. And then fast
so word of mouth in the Russian
10 years
community
later,
spreads,
they're here all over the world. I've trained people from all sorts of countries, and this has taken me to China, it's taken me to London, it's taken me to Russia, it's taken me all over the United States, the fight game, cornering people or setting up camps and doing all that. But yeah, it's just become that's become my niche. I've become the guy that trains fighters,
Right.
And,
so did you have a background in fighting yourself? Like how does, like everyone goes through this imposter syndrome of like, how do you step into a realm where, right, clearly you have the strength training, you have the certification, you have the background, you've been putting in the hard work. How do you see the opportunity when it comes to you?
Well, as far as my fight background, I never fought legally. It was not
there is no thing as Fight Club.
I mean, we're not going to talk about it. No, I did like martial arts and stuff when I was a kid, but I never fought in the ring. My background, I went through a lot of different stuff, like different self battles or whatever, and I put myself in situations that I'm not like the guy at the bar that likes to talk about the good old days and these fights or whatever. I just don't really talk about it, because it just got to a point where it's like, okay, this is just dumb. But as far as that, like imposter syndrome or whatever, like,
so you're saying you had to survive off, some fights, and you had at least what you described about your overcoming the soccer to football transition. You were definitely a fighter mentality.
Yeah, fighter mentality. I didn't have to like survive through the fighting or anything. I was just I just enjoyed it. Like we would set things up, you know what I mean? And it was kind of for sport, but then it just, it was just stupid, it was just being an asshole kind of thing, like, and you got to grow up eventually. But there's never been really that imposter syndrome. If I'm kind of defining it in my head, but you earn respect from people in different ways. You know what I mean? Then if you are passionate about what you do and you're helping somebody do what they are good at and help them do that better, then there's really, I don't know, you don't have to prove anything. I think if somebody's trying to prove something to somebody, then they're not confident, or I don't know, man. If I have to prove something to you, you can,
it ain't worth it.
Yeah, you can fuck off. Like I got, what I mean, I got a lot on my plate and a lot to do.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna waste time. Like I can help somebody out, but
so
but
you
with
know
that
what
said,
you're competent in. Yeah, and you have confidence in that, and you have credibility.
Yeah, and still, like, even to this day, like I played sports, very competitive, and like I train, we spar and do all that. But even if I didn't do that, it wouldn't matter. It's a mutual respect thing, and I think that like my background. Like, I do believe that, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Fight Club. I do think it's good for everybody to, as long as it's set up properly and whatnot, I'll just put that out there, that it's good to get punched in the face. And it's good if you ever want, like, to punch somebody in the face. You know what I mean? Like, live through it. And some people never do that. And if they want to, I mean, you can go to a gym or if they need to. And there's a difference between needs and wants. Like, just recently I was thinking of doing a Muay Thai tournament. But with I'm 30. I turned 39 in a few months, and I was getting ready to do it, and I literally got like a 10-paragraph email from my mom talking about like this tournament I was doing, and the time was taken away from family. But the thing is also all the head injuries. Like, I'll turn around now, you can see I'll come off the mic, but scars in the back of my head. I've got a lot of head injuries, and I was kind of like, hey man, do you want to do this, or do you need to do this? And sometimes those work together, because sometimes you might just want to do something so bad that by all means, to me, that's a necessity because it's going to drive you crazy. But the thing is I've, the fights I've had plenty. I just wanted that experience of, getting in the ring, but there's no, the planning, the money, the time,
what the investment is.
Well, it's also like I said, I turned 39. I get a long email from my mom. Like I didn't even think about it. I was like, okay, of course. I'm not good. It's fine. We continue to train, and if there's a smoker or something that comes up, sure. But like I have no need to do it. Like I've been in plenty of fights, but
to your point, I mean, having done martial arts, and I know that as somebody who's trained in mental health and sitting across a room from people, and to do sparring initially was very threatening, and it was also very humbling because I always tell people that as a 6'4" male, some of the people who tagged me the worst were smaller females, or people that were smaller and quicker,
right.
And you learn about blind spots, you learn about yourself,
right.
And you also, if it's done appropriately, at least for martial arts, there's a respect there, about safety. You're trying to execute strikes, but you're not necessarily trying to harm people.
And that's why I tell people if they're interested, I'm like, just go spar. Just go spar. You got to train before you can spar, but go spar. Yeah,
that's great. So let's see. Darrell had a question.
Yeah.
You want me to ask it for you, Darrell?
Go ahead.
This is Darrell coined term, so don't go putting it in your books just yet. But Darrell wants to know what are in combat and battle. What are the biggest? He calls them red threads of separation, which are. What are the biggest red threads of separation you've seen from your fighters? So, Darrell, you want to explain what we're looking at?
Me being in sports and performance, I see a lot of guys that it's a fine line between being good and great. And me being in this field for 9 or 10 years, it's always the same things, whether it's taking care of the little things, consistency, nutrition, from being good to great or okay to better. So the question that I have, what are the red threads of separation from you being the best that you can be, one, also between, a fighter in the championship rounds? Like, what is the separation point?
Oh, man. There are several. You think about just the thought process that goes on in your head. Let's talk about, you mentioned the championship rounds. And focus on that for a second. So, whenever you are down and out and you're done, if you tell yourself or you let yourself be done, then you're done.
Of course.
But if you literally think to yourself, oh, this is easy, or I got this is nothing, you can immediately trick yourself, even though you're tricking yourself. You can trick yourself into doing more. What I will do with a lot of my guys is I will have them verbally ask for more at certain moments in time whenever they're pushing and they've got nothing left. If they shake their head no, I'll tell them, don't shake your head no. Ask for more, say this is easy. I tell them, this should upset you that you came all the way to the gym to do work, and this is all the work I'm going to have you do. You have so much more left in the tank. And it's a whole thing. It's enjoying that moment whenever you know that you've done all that work and you're in those championship rounds, and these guys can look across, whether it's the ring or look across the cage, and if they themselves feel like they're tired, like their arms are tired, their legs are tired, it's a moment of excitement because the amount of work that they've put in, they know that if they're tired, then their opponent's definitely tired. And
yes,
in that moment of time, it's like, hey, and you get that like evil smile. It's like, all right, this is great. Because if I'm feeling this way, I know how he or she's feeling. So let's go. And then it's just those little tiny moments of pushing past that limit. I had a funny conversation the other day. What drives me crazy is when I hear people say the sky's the limit. I want to say, who are you to tell me the sky's the limit?
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like there are no limits. You keep pushing. Like right there's putting a limit on something. But that the red thread of separation is that.
Tell that to Richard Branson, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. The red thread of separation. I like that. But a main thing would just be that mindset. That mindset, and that goes through everything we've been talking about through what you do for a profession, how you get through those championship rounds, how the respect is earned from whatever somebody's background is.
Of course.
Is mindset. you know, and that's what I like to really tune into with these combat athletes, because nobody's coming to me without ever being trained or training hard. I mean, I've had people that came to me, they're already champions. You know, they've been training their whole life. They've been pushing hard. They've got that. And it's interesting because whenever I'm working with the general population, I see that in some and I see that differently in others. For example, let's say you're doing a bike sprint, okay? In the last 10 seconds of the bike sprint, I say 10 seconds left. Those people that increase their intensity in that last 10 seconds generally are also more successful in their everyday life outside of the gym.
Right.
You know, and I'm always going to push you, but I've found that interesting over the years is that the people that motivate themselves and go harder at the end, they've already got that inside of them. You know, but eventually that goes away too with all of us. With myself, it does. I have a coach. I train with Julio Tron at Saxon Muay Thai, and I go there because he pulls out of every bit of me that I have or that I don't even think I have. I'm done, and he pushes me again. So it's finding that breaking point, making sure they don't break, but making sure that you get every single bit out of them. So it's just mindset.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, Taylor. I mean, first of all, the power of having an accountability fighter, just, you know, no matter accountability partner, no matter what realm you're working in, whether it be therapy and help, you know, if we get isolated, we're just not going to work as hard. We miss that social interaction component. Having somebody there witnessing you at your point where you feel you're done and saying, you know, getting you to ask questions, whether it be response to injury, is it, you know, are you in discomfort? Are you in pain? Right? You have more, reminding you have more, right? Or helping you to visualize in that moment, right? Is this what's going to happen in the ring? How are you going to do? And you're like painting the picture for you so that we were talking about, you know, power of practice earlier, where then, you know, you're actually feeling yourself at a point of failure and you're pushing past it. And just to bring back real quick, I came from a conference of international sport community and people sharing their expertise. And I forget her first name, but her last name is Hunkley. She's a 2-time U.S. national team soccer player. Forgive me for omitting her first name right now, but she was one of the keynote speakers. She's now a successful businesswoman in Beverly Hills as well. But she was saying, when you look at the Olympic development team, and you look at the teams that make to that level, you know, I mean, how many kids in this country have played elite soccer? You talk about that at a really high level. She said, well, the difference in the people that stick and get selected are not the ones that are most talented. They're the ones who are willing to fail repeatedly and continue to push through it, right? Because if you can't deal with the fact that you got upset or you fall behind 2-0 or you can't, you know, that things aren't, the ball's not coming to you, whatever scenario there is where your plan is not being executed or you're on a hot field. I mean, there's environmental conditions in sport. There's a ton of things. If you cannot adjust and continue to find your best and excellence, it's going to be hard to succeed.
Frustration can defeat anybody. You see it in any sport or any activity. You know, the more frustrated you get because you're not able to accomplish something, if it's just in that moment, it's just going to make it harder and harder and harder if you just get more and more upset. So, yeah, absolutely. You've got to be able to recognize that and push forward. And if you can't fail, you can't win. And if you don't know how to fail, you don't know how to win.
That's a great quote.
That's one of the things that I thought about when I mentioned the red threads. You know, one of the biggest red threads is the will to continue to push when you hit adverse times. And that's, for me, is one of the biggest separation from someone that's just okay, mediocre, and to someone that's great or successful. You know, so when I think of red threads, that's ultimately
that's a quality that's hard to quantify. So,
it is.
So Taylor, when you're working with somebody or you're in the ring and somebody's showing you a little bit of self-doubt or their will seems like it's, you know, being beaten down, how do you help them to discover that or build upon it?
Well, if it's in the fight, I mean, hopefully we've built on that and they've discovered it before we get there. But it's just a reminder. I mean, these guys and girls, they're true, you know, as far as when it comes to combat sports, they're warriors in there. And it's just a reminder, you know, if you just tell them, like, you don't get tired. You know, like you're not tired. Like you've done harder than this. You just remind them, you know, because they know. They just need reminded.
Right.
You know, and it's an individual sport. They're in there by themselves. So we go in there, we're team this, we're team that, and we're there together. We win together, we lose together. But at the end of the day,
they're in the ring.
These people, they get in the ring or the cage by themselves, then it's all them. So, you know, it's just to remind them what they've done and what they're capable of. Remind them that they're different, that they are pushing it. You know, they've been pushing it. They've earned their spot there, but so has the other person. You know, so who wants it more right now? You know, because any day, you know, I always say in boxing or MMA, you know, anything can happen. Well, if you're both at the highest level, your opponent should have earned that spot as well. So they want it too. So you gotta know who wants it more. And sometimes that just takes a friendly reminder, you know. And that's that. Yeah. And it's down. I mean, these guys. I mean, you know, one fighter. I mean, they break their hands a lot in the fight, and one, you know, as hey, come back to the corner between rounds again. As I've said him a couple times, Alan Joban. It was his, was it his left hand? I think it was his left hand. Yeah. You know, I broke him. I broke my left hand. Like, well, hit him with your fucking right hand. You know what I mean? Like you gotta keep going. You know, and most people can't. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's a severe injury. It wasn't just a fracture. You know, and these guys fight through that. So they are wired that way. I mean, they're wired that way through genetics from youth, from growing up and wanting that and having that drive. What our jobs as coaches is to fine tune that. And again, to get that extra little bit, that extra 1% to make sure they get better every single day. Otherwise, it's just wasted talent.
Yeah. So I mean, I train athletes.
Yeah.
Like football, basketball, baseball, but I assume it's totally different. One of the biggest challenges that I face.
But it's not. I might interrupt. It's not totally different.
Go ahead.
It's not totally different. Like people see the fight game because it looks like warriors, but like it's the football players. So that was my background. That's a very violent sport.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? It's a team sport. I mean, fighting's different than baseball. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of the same struggles go through.
Of course, and I remember when we did the workout, the hybrid workout with football and mixed martial arts, and a lot of the movements were really similar. And you know, just listening to you, I think one of the biggest things is the will and the capacity to push when you physically, mentally exhausted and have nothing left in the tank. And that's one thing I admire about you. Just seeing you in the facility, you have a way of getting these guys to tap into something that they couldn't literally push themselves to evolve into. What was the spark behind that, or is it something that you just do?
Man, first, thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
It's unmatchable. Like,
thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that.
Now I have to be a fly on the wall now.
You're welcome anytime.
It's crazy. It's a badass.
Thank you very much. You know, I love seeing people do their best.
Yes, sir.
You know, I love seeing people do their best, and I'm very grateful to have that ability to find what makes people do their best. Mm-hmm. And maybe not for everybody, but for a lot of people, I've been able to do that, and I continue, and it's I truly enjoy it. You know, so, and it's finding what motivates people, different people. Finds what motivates different people, because some people need, you know, some barking at them. Some people need, you know, positive reinforcement. Some people need to be asked, you know, what the hell they're doing. It's different from each person to the next person. It's different. And what sparked that in me is, I don't know, I myself always want to get better at all walks of life, even just a little bit, like you mentioned, reading a chapter a week in a book, whether it's doing one more rep in the gym or whatever it may be, whether it's, you know, spending more time with the kid, anything, just get better at life every single day. And it's very rewarding for me to be a part of that with other people, because seeing them succeed, I'm succeeding too.
Yes, sir.
You know, and it's not that I'm directly getting anything from them, you know, unless they're paying me. But you know, it's true. I truly enjoy the work. People say, and I understand the philosophy behind it, but when people say, you know, love what you do and never work a day in your life, well, the way I look at it is I absolutely love what I do. So I'm going to work my ass off at it. I'm going to work as hard as I can because I love what I do. And again, I understand the philosophy behind it, because it's not seen as work. It's not seen as a job if you're truly enjoying it. but I can't. I mean, I was just getting ready to say I was going to go back on myself and say I can't work any harder, but that's also bullshit. Like I could always push myself harder.
Of course.
People, you know, I hear a lot like nobody's outworking you. Man, you can always find somebody that's better than you and somebody that's working harder than you. You know, you'll always find that. And that's also drive for me with my career, is that I know somebody's out there doing something. When I sit down, there's somebody standing up working. And if I really want to be at the top of the game, I got to get up and I got to go and I got to do. And the same thing with these fighters. I like to remind them, you know, your opponent's training right now. You know, your opponent's training. If it came down to who does better on this next drill to win the fight, give me that. You know what I mean? You know, give me that. I want that out of you. You know, you got to win the fight before you even step in there.
Yeah, I do think, Taylor, that it does speak to you as an athlete, and that even though you're not speaking or didn't you know come up maybe in MMA or didn't have the same background as the athlete you're coaching, the fact that you prepare the same way that you're asking them to, that you're pushing yourself, I do think it. Like there's a you know mirror neurons, or I mean there's an authenticity that comes with that.
Yeah.
Right. So you know it's when your doctor at your annual wellness tells you should drop 10 pounds, and you see that they are smoking outside or struggling with the same issue, in a way you discount it.
Right. My wife and I talked about that just was it last night? Yeah, it's Tuesday. Just last night we were watching football and we were sitting back and I was kind of laughing. I said it's crazy that football at the time was such an important part of my life. And I even, you know, went to school. I was going to play in college. And again, that route changed, but it was a big deal. And I was like, it's not like a football family. Like we watch fights all the time, because that was always kind of, for me, that's where like it became my identity was the fighting when I was young, you know, and it was a bad thing. It turned into a negative thing to where that was kind of how I identified myself, as like, you know, there's something going on, like I'm the one that goes there and handles this and handles that. So there's that background and there's that mutual respect, but it was never done in a sporting environment like this. And so it's kind of like that wasn't my path of this life, because I've battled with other things, you know, and overcome different deals, but it was always kind of an idea to do that. But my life was always a little bit apart, so I was never able to focus with the martial arts and doing all that stuff. So
in that way, you know, just to highlight, it sounds like when you work with a fighter, it's rewarding, even though it's, when you gave the example of you never work a day in your life, when you find your passion, it's so rewarding because you're validating that part of yourself that was a fighter.
Yeah, and it's and that's
it is a fighter.
With any athletes too, you know, and I just enjoy the sport. I think it's raw. You know, two people go in there and one wins, and I love being a part of that, and I love the people I work with. I truly do. Like I truly want them to win and want them to do well. They're providing for their families through this, and it's the same way with any sport that if I work with, because I don't just work with them. That's just my I specialize in that. But if I work with a football player, you know, and Darrell mentioned movement patterns. That's what I look at. People say, how do they train differently? They train differently because they train with different coaches. But a lot of sports train very similarly. You know, it's movement patterns, because what my job is I need to push these guys and I need to make them better. But when they're with me, when they're doing strength and conditioning, it should be the one time where we have the most control and the lowest possibility of injury. You know, things happen, but they shouldn't. You know, in strength and conditioning, it should be very, very safe. If they're sparring, it's more likely something to go wrong. So it's not like we don't have to, okay, we're training a boxer, so we're going to put weights in his hands and have him punch a bunch of times. No, they do very similar stuff. It's different than bodybuilding, but sports performance is really sports performance. You know,
so it's applied stuff. You're doing movements that you're going to use.
Yeah, I'm doing movements at Darrell. I see them doing movements. I see all the other guys doing the same kind of movement patterns. Of course, we all put our little spin on things, but it's when you put too much of a spin on things when it just gets kind of silly. But yeah, it's breaking it down, keeping it simple, but it's mindset. And when it comes down to, it always comes back down to mindset, and that different mindset comes with different sports. And I think you work with a lot of football players. I played football. It's a similar mindset. You know, it's that kill or be killed, you know, and it's a true thing, you know, and you've got to, when you get in there, you've got to be willing to put everything on the line, because again, there is going to be somebody else. They're willing to put everything on the line. So if you're not going to match that or exceed that, then you got to get out of there because you don't deserve to be there and you shouldn't be there because you're going to get hurt, and that's with any sport. Like, you got to come with 100%. And I look at that, I take that energy and I just look at that with my career. If I'm pushing, if I'm at work, I'm away from my family because I'm working, I'm going to give it my 100%. Because if I'm not going to give it my 100%, first of all, my clients aren't going to get what they're showing up for because they're not going to get me. But also, like I said, there's always going to be somebody out there working harder, that wants your spot, and I'm one of those people that I like to be there with a bunch of people. I want to help everybody out. If I can get to the next level, if I can bring people with me, I want to do that. At the same time, I also need to know that not only am I competing with myself, people say it's you versus you. Of course it is. It's also you versus everybody else, because that's what makes the difference. That's what there's champions. There's champions in everything. You might not wear a championship belt, but there are champions in all walks of life.
When you set your definition of excellence, and you define it, then, like you said, we won't use a term, but you're expanding limits all the time. And when you're trying to move behind limitations and set new goals and move into unlimited potential, it's empowering. But it takes reminder, and it takes, like you said, a team. And sometimes, it helps to have a partner who's in the game with you, including your mom willing to send 10-page emails if you step out of line, whatever it takes. Right. But
she's gonna listen to this and she's gonna say, you know what? If you want to go for it, go for it. And so we'll come back on. And
Is
I'll
this
have
a
the
service? Can she send me a 5-page email if I hire her?
It's amazing.
I might need one as well.
It's amazing. No, I think it might have been a bribe from my wife too, because I spent a lot of time at the gym. This old man doing a Muay Thai tournament.
You see how the network is there to support you. Your support group.
I might have gray hair if I didn't shave my head so close. So
Well, Taylor, we thank you for coming in here and sharing your passion, your grit, your work ethic. And for inspiring us and taking your time to do so. We hope we can come grab you in the gym and get some footage or
something
absolutely.
like that. We'd love to have you.
Hope to do some mobile stuff in the future. Darrell, any parting thoughts for us today?
The only thought that I have, when can I get one of those badass workouts? I see you every day. We're both working. I just got to find time to get my ass kicked.
Well, you know what, man? How long does it take to get back over to the gym right now?
I have to train at
I
have to train at 1:30.
We got to go back and play back some of these like motivational things. That's your red thread of separation. Or what was it? Was that it?
You hunt or be hunted.
There you go.
That's
there
right.
you go. No, anytime,
let's
brother.
Let's
anytime.
get one on the calendar for you too, and I'm going to have to do it as well because I got to know how these MMA fighters train if I'm going to help them in the mental game.
Exactly. And you know what? You guys are both asking that because I hope that you feel like I'm going to give it my best and you guys do your best.
Yes,
and there we go. And then we all respect. We all work hard. Let's go.
You trust you know what you're going to get coming in.
Let's go.
I'm really humbled to be in your presence every single day. It's definitely great to see you work.
Likewise, man. I'm going to give you that $20 I said. You said that on the show today. I really appreciate it, bro. Not to make I appreciate it. Thank
having
you so
gratitude,
much.
having respect for the people that come on and being truly humbled by. There's the love in the studio for the people that are willing to share their secrets, their story. The fact you're willing to share some of the, darker clouds of earlier beginning. It wasn't inside the realm of what was supposed to be the career or was supposed to be acceptable, but it becomes what channels you to be excellent,
of course,
and to help other people to reach their ultimate potential. So Taylor, please let our guests know how to find you, how to reach you, and how to come in and get excellent.
Well, to tap in real quick, what you just said, there are no secrets to hard work. It's just you just work hard. And to find me, you go to Instagram, Taylor Ramsdell, Taylor_Ramsdell, TaylorRamsdell.com, and all the contact stuff will be through there. And I really appreciate you guys letting me be on the show. It was very nice to meet you. Likewise. Thank you so much for the kind words, Jarrell. The feeling is mutual, my man. It's awesome to share the floor with you over there at the gym. I learn a lot every single day, so I appreciate you guys. And I learned a lot here today. This isn't something that's in my comfort zone.
You're pretty good at it, though.
I'm gonna listen back and be like, man, what? I don't even know what I was talking about. But I appreciate y'all. I'd love to come back. So thank you so much.
You sound like a polished veteran. You're most welcome, and we will we'll be airing this and sharing this hopefully with your network. And I can't wait. I love the little plug for Muscle Farm, right? Get in there. They got, they got a full MMA size ring over there.
Yeah,
and
I mean, there are two things that we could have an entire day of shows on. One would be those dark clouds you mentioned in the past, but we might have to change the rating of your podcast. But I'm an open book. We'll dive into that. And the other thing is to talk about how amazing Muscle Farm is. It's a true blessing to be over there. It's a great facility, great energy. The trainers there, Jarrell's one of them. The other guys there, it's the energy's contagious, and that's why one of the main reasons why I love going there every single day. A lot of good facilities in LA. I do think it's one of the best ones, if not the best one, but it's the energy that's unrivaled. I love it.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that before we leave, and I can say it is contagious. And we spoke earlier about how this field is an ego-driven sport, but when I walk into Muscle Farm, I don't feel any of that, and that's why I'm humbled to be. When I see Taylor, when I see Omar and all the other guys working, we're working in sync with one another, and the vibe is contagious and real.
Well, that's how you know you're in the right place, especially when you're in a sport or profession where it is sometimes isolative, when you can go into a place and you feel like you can just be one of the team or just one of the guys, like a little bit lowest common denominator of just feeling like you're part of something bigger. That's empowering. And I encourage everyone to have that in whatever realm they be in to get out of burnout in whatever profession you might be in. So, again, thank you all for tuning in. Please shout us out on Instagram, Richard Listens, Twitter, Richard Listens, Facebook, Richard Listens. Let us know, who do you want to hear from? What sport or profession are we yet to share about? What questions do you have for Taylor or Darrell? And we'll try and get their expert insights on it and get it back to you. Thanks again, everybody. I'm Richard Listens, and we're out.